War Patrols, created by William Schmaltz. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. This episode of War Patrols is sponsored by Flag Up Mailbox, located in Ironwood, Michigan. USS Harder, Report of Second War Patrol, Part 3. Returned to periscope depth, seas now mountainous. Surfaced in typhoon weather, 12 miles south of Shiono Misaki. Ran on course 120 during the night. Time did not permit definite identification of last night's target. However, spacing of the two hits indicate a ship of over 400 feet in length. It was a heavily loaded tanker believed to be about 7,000 tons. September 20th. Seas 30 feet high, maintained steerage at 6 knots into the sea. Impossible to run at periscope depth without broaching, and very doubtful if torpedoes would perform properly in these seas. Ran at 80 feet. Attempted periscope observation and broached. Submerged to 120 feet for remainder of day. Even at that depth, the sub rolled 15 degrees each way. Surfaced and made southerly course to ride out the typhoon. September 22nd. Seas now smooth. Sighted tanker and cargo vessel at range of 8,000 yards. No surface escort, air escort undetected. At range of 2,000 yards, both ships zigged radically to their right. Angle on bow and range to leading ship were too large to justify shot. Made full speed to close track of tanker, and at range of 2,000 yards fired 3 torpedoes from forward tubes. Depth setting of 10 feet. No hits, although the torpedo tracks were clearly visible and the torpedoes appeared to pass underneath the target. It is realized that the track angle was poor and the range far, but torpedo performance or exploder mechanism is held in suspicion on this approach. Just as periscope was lowered, the unseen air escort let us have it. The first bomb was directly overhead. The forward 20-millimeter gun was knocked into a jammed position, and the talkback system to the bridge flooded out. Several light bulbs in the ship were shattered. 4 more aerial bombs were dropped, but none as close as the first. September 23rd. Night, very dark until moonrise about 0100. Visibility varied between good and poor. Radar picked up 2 targets at range of 18,000 yards. At 16,000 yards, both ships were in sight, and the pips on radar screen were half-inch high. Sounded battle stations, put 3 engines on propulsion, and maneuvered to gain position ahead for combined radar periscope attack at dawn. 0530. Submerged 5 miles directly ahead of targets, held depth at 40 feet, and commenced approach using radar and lower periscope. With range at 4,000 yards, shifted con to the high periscope and increased depth to 60 feet. It was hard to believe, but these 2 valuable targets had no surface escort. It is believed, however, that they were about to rendezvous with their air escort for their daytime trip down the coast. Both ships in column, leading ship range was 800 yards. Fired 3 torpedoes from forward tubes with gyro angles at 0, 1 degree divergence spread, and 10 feet depth setting. The first torpedo hit the target under its stern. Number 2 and number 3, spread from aft to forward, should have hit too, but no other explosions were heard. Shifted attack to the next ship. It headed directly at Harder, then increased speed and turned north, heading for the safety of Nagoya Bay, 6 miles away. She didn't make it. Sub was swung hard right to bring stern tubes to bear. Fired 3 torpedoes from stern tubes, depth setting 10 feet, a torpedo run of 1,800 yards. 1 hit directly in center of target. Took a look at the first target. It was sinking rapidly with only 50 feet of the bow sticking straight up in the air. Took another look at the second target. Its entire midsection was ablaze, with flames enveloping the bridge and shooting high in the air. It had a heavy list to port and was considered in sinking condition. Started deep, and as we passed 80 feet, the sub was rocked violently by two heavy explosions. Men in all compartments now heard heavy objects striking the water, believed to have been falling debris from the second ship, which was burning furiously at last look. Soundman heard and reported both ships breaking up. The air escorts arrived 2 hours late. From 800 until 1100, they proceeded to plaster the nearby area with bombs. None were closer than half a mile, but they really packed a wallop. Their noise and pressure waves were far more intense than any depth charges or other aerial bombs that we have heard. 15 of these big ones were dropped, each making a distinct slap on striking the water before the explosion took place. Our torpedo exploder mechanisms are under suspicion. The attack on the first ship should have netted 3 hits, and the attack on the second ship should have produced 2 hits. Surfaced, discovered saltwater in reduction gear sump tanks. Taking remedial steps to purify lube oil and correct source of trouble. September 26th, sighted 2-ship convoy with 3 escorts hugging the coastline. Sounded battle stations. Sighted large patrol bombers circling over the convoy. Surface escorts identified as 2 Chidori-type destroyers and 1 armed trawler. The convoy was no more than half-mile off the beach, and our course to intercept took us into shoal water. Nearest range attained on the ships was 3,600 yards, seas flat, sounding of 50 fathoms. Unfavorable track angle and great range did not warrant expenditure of our last 2 torpedoes. Broke off the track. The leading target appeared to be a small vessel of 2,700 tons, and the second ship was a cargo vessel of about 4,000 tons. 2100. Radar contact at 11,000 yards. 2 large targets and 1 escort. Maneuvered to gain position ahead and commenced radar tracking. At range of 9,000 yards, escort had picked us up and made challenge, the letter King on an orange light. The radio watch now heard signals nearby on frequency of 450 kilocycles. These signals were repeated several times. Gained position to seaward of enemy ships in order to silhouette them in the glare of lights from a town on the beach 4 miles away. 2240. Started closing range. Radar made a complete sweep in azimuth, locating an additional escort sharp on port bow and another escort on starboard beam. Escort was apparently uncertain as to whether we were friend or foe, or he would have opened fire. He turned away and joined the convoy which headed around Omaisaki. This convoy is believed to have been the same one encountered during the morning. Cleared area since our presence had been disclosed and headed for Mikisaki. September 27th. Sighted half-dozen lights of small boats patrolling coastline between Daiyosaki and Mikisaki. Spent morning dodging 4 different armed trawlers on a picket line. These boats were searching by echo-ranging, but did not seem too efficient. We passed within 3,000 yards of them several times. September 28th. Worked in close to the beach near Kantorizaki, cruised at 4 knots from 1 to 3 miles offshore, dodging sampans. The headlights of many cars moving along a nearby highway reminded us of Riverside Drive along the Hudson. The town was well lighted, no evidence of blackouts. 0500. Radar contact showed large targets at 10,000 yards. These targets were unexpectedly to seaward of us. Increased speed to 15 knots. At range of 8,000 yards, first target was sighted. This is the first time we had known a convoy to be so far out from the shoreline. Stayed on surface until early light of dawn forced us to dive at 0600. Continued approach on nearest of 5 cargo ships. 0620. at range of 2,500 yards, fired our last 2 torpedoes. Gyros 0, depth setting of 8 feet. 2 minutes after firing, torpedo room personnel and 1 man in control room heard what they described as a thud. No explosions. Turned off track and went deep. 2 depth charges landed as we went down. These 2 brought the number of depth charges and aerial bombs addressed to the Harder on this cruise to an even total of 100. September 30th. En route Midway at 3-engine speed. Sighted 2 armed trawlers close together, distant 10 miles. Manned guns and maneuvered to silhouette the enemy against the sunset. Closed targets slowly in order to draw their fire and determine their maximum gun range. Our SJ radar was out of commission at this time. At estimated range of 7,000 yards, both trawlers opened fire, and their shots landed about 3,000 yards short. Closed in another 2,500 yards, then commenced firing with the 3-inch gun. Enemy ships now pulled apart to divide our fire. At about 4,000 yards, one of the trawlers obtained our range. 1 shot passed directly over the gun crew and landed 50 yards beyond. Another shot landed 100 yards in front of sub. Others were close. Opened range 500 yards to utilize our advantage of greater gun range and continued the fight. Concentrated our fire against the larger of the 2 ships. This gun battle, from the start, was considered to be nothing more and nothing less than a good gunnery exercise and morale builder for the crew. A careful lookout watch for aircraft and periscope was maintained throughout. Several hits were scored on the larger trawler. At 1800, both targets turned away, zigzagging radically. They threw barrels of burning oil over the side and retired behind the smoke screen. The light conditions made gun pointing more and more difficult, but we retained the advantage and remaining just beyond range of the splashes from their gunfire. More hits were scored on this phase, but all high-capacity shells were expended and armor-piercing shells had to be used. With all 3-inch ammunition expended, fired 1 magazine of 20 millimeter at the nearest target for good measure. The experience gained by the gun crew is considered invaluable, and the boost in morale was very apparent. After having dodged this type of enemy patrol ship for the past 3 weeks on station, the boys were very glad to dish it out for a change. October 1st. On surface at 17 knots. Bridge lookout sighted 4-engine bomber gliding in with engines out, off port bow, distant 3 miles. Made quick dive to 150 feet. No bombs dropped. It is believed that this plane was from Marcus Island, 300 miles to the south. We had attempted a radio transmission to Hawaii 2 hours before this, and it is considered very likely that this plane was guided to us by a radio homing obtained by Marcus and Tokyo. The attempted transmission had been thoroughly jammed by a Japanese station. October 4th. Moored alongside USS Barb in Submarine Nest at Midway. Took 18,000 gallons of fuel oil aboard. October 8th. Rendezvoused with USS Snook for entry in Pearl Harbor. Moored to pier at Pearl Harbor. End of Second War Patrol.